So this is little Justin. This is me. I don't know if I look the same when I was a little kid. And, I grew up, like Oyami shared a little while ago, in a home literally with gunshot holes on the outside of my house. A lot of love in my family. I tell people when they say, how did you grow up? Good childhood, bad childhood? I said, it's complicated. you know, like if y'all remember on Facebook back in the day when you used to have your relationship status, it's complicated was one of them. That's how I talk about my childhood. And I think a lot of us have that. And so a lot of love, lots of love, but also a lot of freaking trauma, alcoholism, like violence in the house. My father was a police officer, but was also domestically violent. And so there was nobody to call for help because they were all his friends, and just so much complication in the family, but also so much love. And one of the reasons why I became so passionate about teaching about the power of forgiveness was because, first of all, I realized that even after all the personal growth work that I was doing, after all the times that I had tried to ascend and rise above and send love and light and do my healing work and do this and go to therapy and do the inner child work and all the things, right? Somehow it would always end up rerouting back to the same damn thing. And I'm like, how come, like, shouldn't I really be able to let this go? Like, really let this go? Like, some people will tell you, oh, you never let it go. And I didn't really believe in that. And so I said, I want to really understand the power of forgiveness and how to forgive in a way that frees us, really frees us to be able to choose how we want to show up and live our lives versus being controlled by the story or the situation of our past. And so I went on a deep dive of understanding the power of forgiveness, learning many rituals, studying with many teachers, reading many books, and then kind of synthesized this process only through embodying it in myself. And I said, well, let me see if this works for some others. And so I started trying it on with my family, who isn't into this personal growth, or who wasn't, they are now, but who was very not into this personal growth work and this back in the day. And for them, it worked. And then I started sharing it with my students. And then, now it's been, years and a book and all these things later. And so it's just really a big gift to share because we can love and light and compassion and dream and vision all we want. And that stuff is great. I'm not knocking it. But if we're still holding on and in the grip of our wounding, then all of our activism, all of our change work, all of our personal work just continues to be colored by our unresolved wounding. It continues to be colored by our own unresolved wounding. And so this is why this work is so important and holds true in many capacities. And, that quote about it being colored by our unresolved wounding, I have a teacher who I work with doing shadow work. Anybody who's interested in that, his name is Robert Masters. And he talks about that as well. Like if we haven't healed our shadow, if we haven't dug into our shadow, then all of our activism, all of our change work, his quote is around, if we haven't healed our shadow, then it gets colored by our unresolved wounding, is Robert's quote. And in our shadow, the piece that I add here is often this element of forgiveness. Y'all with me right now? Yeah? Okay, so I'm just giving us a bigger frame because I think we think of forgiveness as situational, but it has a much greater context and impact than I think most of us sometimes realize. So let me talk to you about what forgiveness is not. Because before I can go into forgiveness and what it is, I have found that it's really helpful for me to just talk about what forgiveness isn't, because there's a lot of confusion here. Okay. And yes, thank you, Yami, for putting Robert's information in the chat box. I appreciate that. He's an amazing author and teacher. His book that I recommend is called Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. Amazing, amazing piece of work. So forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not condoning. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not excusing. Forgiveness is not minimizing your hurt. Forgiveness is also not reconciliation. It's not denying or suppressing anger. It's more about releasing resentment, and I'll go into this later. And forgiveness is not ignoring accountability or justice. For example, You can pursue punishment for something or even recompensation for something, and those be completely independent of the choice to forgive. And so and the reason I bring this up is because oftentimes I find the reason why we hesitate to forgive is because we entangle forgiveness with all these other things that it's really not. Okay, so think of all the people who spend energy and time and money and resources, for example, pursuing legal action, and then get the result they want. Get it, okay? And then never come out on the other side with any sort of feeling of release or closure, even after getting what they want. And that's because the energy of forgiveness is not actually tied to any of those things. Somebody can be awarded millions of dollars. There can be reparations. There could be all kinds of things. And we see this in the social justice movement often. We can be protesting and marching for something, get it, and then be like, nope, and still not feel closure. And obviously there's more work to do. These things don't exist in silos, but there's a level here that we have to understand on how to offer forgiveness. And this is because the healing work is an inside job, right? So I want to give you my favorite definition of forgiveness. This is the one that's going to come next that will cracked the code of forgiveness for me. And so if you hear anything that I say in this session today, I want you to hear this next thing that I'm saying. Just hear it with your whole body, okay? Listen with your whole body. What is forgiveness? This is from Oprah. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. Now when I heard that quote, and it's pretty amazing because Oprah quotes a lot of other people and stuff in her work, but she had said this, and I went, I got it. It was the key that I needed that unlocked the code for me. Okay, because it brings us back to the reality of the present moment. It releases us from what should have happened, what we think could have happened, what we would have done, what they should have done, and allows us to actually be present with what's in front of us. And then once we're able to be present with what's in front of us, then we can actually ask the important question and say, even though this happened, and I'm aware of it, and I'm present with it, how do I want the future to unfold? Because forgiveness requires radical acceptance of whatever happened in the past, even if we don't like it, even if we don't condone it, even if we wouldn't have suggested it, asked for it, but recognizing it in the present moment for exactly what it is and realizing that you can let go of the hope that it would have happened any differently than it was. Letting go of that control. And that opens a doorway to grief. It opens a doorway to our emotions. And it opens a doorway, most importantly, to freedom on the other side of opening up a new pathway to possibility. And that doorway is not available. It stays locked if we're stuck in resentment and fear. So I want to be very clear here, because I know some people, when I'm saying this, it's like, very like, and then it was, I forgave, and then it was happily ever after. I just want to be very clear that I'm not saying forgiveness equals getting a free pass at life, right? So this is why I brought up this element of what if forgiveness is not, because it's not entangled with any of this. So you want to pay attention when you're hesitant to forgive. What are you entangling forgiveness with that is keeping you from actually stepping into forgiveness? Because the truth is, and this is not going to be any new, revelation. I think this that I'm about to say next is pretty much said in every lesson or book about forgiveness that exists at this point, is that forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person, right? It's for you. And oftentimes we have a hard time letting go because we're trying to control a situation and we're attached to what has to do with the other person, but we're the ones who remain in shackles the whole time. And so this is an important concept to just really understand, is that forgiveness is for you, is to free you, to free you. All right. And that's the power of what forgiveness actually is. So I kept that quote up there for a little while, just so you all can really feel it. Now, I want to skip forward to an important concept here called premature forgiveness. Because you might think like, okay, now I got it. I don't know if the forgiveness that I'm having, I'm letting go. So now I should just be able to write a letter of forgiveness, let go of the hope of the past being anything different, burn it in a little bonfire of some sort, and abracadabra, I have forgiven. How many of you, put some ones in the chat box, if you have written a letter, letting something go, burned it in a fire at some kind of a ritual, and then a few days later, been worried about the same stuff? Put some ones in the chat box if you have done this. Yes? Okay. So there we go. So this is premature forgiveness, okay? And we've all heard somebody say, I'm over it. I let it go. All the while knowing they didn't let go of it or get over it at all. And this is when somebody else kind of does something, you have to deal with their passive aggressive behavior after they said they forgave you. Or if you agreed to forgive someone, and move on with your lives, but then you actually feel stuck with resentment. This is all premature forgiveness, right? Premature forgiveness is just a shortcut that never works. The kind of creed of premature forgiveness is it's really pretend to forget, ignore, and suppress. Those are the tenets of premature forgiveness, rather than deal with, work through, confront, accept, express. This is what we have to do with real forgiveness. And so premature forgiveness, just to be very clear, means that the one who is offering forgiveness hasn't actually taken full responsibility for internally processing what's happened and how what's happening is still impacting them in the present. Okay. So I'm going to just say a few things here because I saw some things in the chat, and this will continue to unfold. I'm just giving you the priming here. This will unfold in very clear ways as we move through. But this idea of giving up the hope that the past could have been any different